Hello, everyone. My name is Hunter, and I'm a sales associate here at Fossil Creek Nursery. And today I'm going to talk about Japanese beetles. So, Japanese beetle is a pest that affects roses, grapes, apple trees, lawns, and more on. And we'll go into a little detail about all that. The way to identify the Japanese beetles is they're actually kind of a pretty insect, to be honest. They're iridescent with a showy bright green, purples and browns, kind of all almost a little bit psychedelic. They hang out in clusters together and they bury themselves up in flowers, and sometimes it can be hard to see them at first, but with a little bit of digging, you can find them. So I'll just talk about the life cycle here for a second. Japanese beetles have a 1-year life cycle. In that 1 year, they can do a lot of damage. They start off as larvae that live in the roots of grasses, and they feed on their roots until around June when they become adult beetles. When the adult beetle emerges from the grass, usually around June. They need something new to feed on. They usually opt for roses, grapes, Virginia creeper, raspberries, apples, crab apples, and some varieties of maples, as well as a few other varieties of trees. They're not very picky eater. They're usually feeding from June to August. During this time, as well, the female beetles head to moist turf grass and deposit their eggs a few inches below the surface of the soil. In a 4 to 8 week laying period, a female Japanese beetle can lay up to 60 eggs, quite a bit. The eggs will stay buried below the roots until they hatch into larvae around September. The larvae then move to eat the roots of the grass until winter, when the temperature is too cold and activity ceases. Once the weather heats back up past 60 degrees, they go back on a feeding frenzy and the cycle continues. So, a little bit about the beetle damage that happens. When the larva attacks the turf grass, it kind of mimics the effects of drought stress. So we're talking about browning the leaves, drying up, loss of roots, easy to pull the roots out. So if you went to pull a clump out of Kentucky bluegrass, for example, it would just rip right out. Like I said, is yellowing and drying out. And in severe cases, the turf grass can die. The adult beetles feed on foliage, buds, and flowers, and the chewing pattern is known as skeletonizing. So skeletonizing essentially means that they eat all the green parts besides the veins. So, as the namesake, it looks like a skeleton on a leaf. When they munch the flowers, they leave little holes there, and there's just nothing left. The damage is mostly cosmetic, but if many leaves are damaged, the plant itself will suffer, and new growth in the future will be much less. So, a couple of ways to control them. If we want to talk about the most organic way, especially if there is a small infestation, you can basically take them off by hand or shake them off of the tree or flower. Of course, there's a kind of limit to how much you can do with this. So if it's a further infestation, there is even more controls that we can do. And I'll go in specific of those controls in just a minute. So, like I said, another way is to treat with insecticides. So because they are a insect that feeds on flowers, we have to worry about toxicity to pollinators also. So when you're using insecticides, you always want to do it either early in the morning or late in the evening when it's cooler and the pollinators are not out. Bees and other pollinators usually work in the warmer times of the day, so we're talking, somewhere between basically 9 to 5. We'll call the bees on a 9 to 5 job. So you want to spray maybe closer to like 6 a.m. And then more like 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. Sorry. So before I get into the specifics of the insecticides, I want to note that it's very important to read the labels. USDA says that I must tell you this because for different applications, there's different rates, and you always want to be safe and aware of when you're using these controls. So I'll talk about first for lawns, for lawn control. Regular mowing and good cultural practices is going to be the best way to control Japanese beetle in the ground. One thing you can use also that will kill the larva is going to be something like BT. So this is called dipple dust. The main ingredient is a bacteria that actually will eat away at the soft body of the larva. This is an organic way. This is a safe way. And this is specifically for treating the larva. So this would be something early stages of the life cycle. Nematodes, which is a living organism, is also another way to control the larva. We do usually keep them in stock. I believe right now we're out, but give us a call and maybe we can figure something out for you. So going down the line, I'm going to go from kind of organic to a little more, let's say, hardcore controls. So neem oil is the first thing I'm going to show you. Neem, as you can see, for organic gardening. This is probably the most organic control you can use besides the BT. This will essentially irritate the beetles so much and clog up their breathing and things like that, which will deter them from wanting to come to your flowers. Great thing about neem is because it's organic, you can use it pretty consistently without having to worry about affecting your plants in a negative way or affecting other beneficial insects. Once again, definitely important to use this early in the morning and late at night, like I was saying. So the next one I'm going to show you is called triple action. So triple action, the main ingredient of this is pyrethrins. There's also a bit of neem oil in here, but the pyrethrins is another organic based substance. It's actually derived from mums. So this is a little bit more powerful than just the neem, but still not a very toxic thing. If we're talking about something that's a really bad infestation, then a systemic insecticide is going to come into play. So I have the tree and shrub drench here. This controls many insects, but this is mainly for a very heavy infestation, so more like a last-ditch effort here. A couple other controls before I finish up here. Azodactyrin is also, it's a main ingredient of neem. Azodactyrin can be sold separately as a concentrate, so that's another one that can be used. Imidacloprid is another one that we have here. This is more for a lawn application, and that is also something that is in the tree and shrub drench. And permethrin, which is also a relative to the pyrethrins, is something to use in more of a hard infestation. So something when it's going to be like one of those last-ditch efforts. Once again, as I said, please read these instructions so you use it properly. We always want to be safe. We want to be good to our environment. We don't want to affect beneficial insects if we can't. And yeah, I hope this was a good little lesson on how to treat your Japanese beetles. Once again, my name is Hunter. Come here and visit us at Fossil Creek Nursery, and if you have any more questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll just wait here for a second. All right, it looks like no questions. Once again, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time, we'll see you again. Thanks.